Today's video is all based on a true story. In the 1900s, Sarah Rector is a young girl in Oklahoma. Being a descendant of the Creek freedmen, or black people who were enslaved by the Creek Nation, just like her parents, Sarah is entitled to a land grant. And the no-neck Mitch McConnell man gives her the deed to her 160-acre land. Joe Rector, Sarah's father, says they should sell it. But Sarah has heard the loud rumbling underneath all the dirt, and she's convinced that God gave her that land for a reason. Being a very smart girl, the discovery of oil in multiple areas in Oklahoma has piqued Sarah's interest. She's convinced there's oil in her land. But Joe doubts white people would have given them the land if they knew there was oil. Besides, they have to worry about the $30 property tax on Sarah's land. But Sarah insists, so Joe accompanies her to Muskogee. They try different oil companies, but many of the mayonnaise refuse to talk to them. Then Joe enters the Pan-Oklahoma Petroleum Company. There he meets Mr. Devnan. Meanwhile, Sarah wanders into a whites-only restaurant, the Busy Bee Cafe. The waitress refuses to serve her.
Whites only.
I'm about to snatch that hoe's bonnet. A nice man defends Sarah and even offers to pay for her drink. This man is Bert Smith. Afterwards, Sarah follows her father and officially meets Mr. Devnan. The businessman agrees to take a look at the land. His assistant tells him that oil was found just 5 miles from where they are. And so, Mr. Devnan makes a proposition. He says Pan-Okie will shoulder all expenses of the dig, including the crew and the rig. But Sarah has done her research. She asked Mr. Devnan to lease the land first. She rejects the 50-cent offer for an acre per month and demands $1 per acre since that is the standard. She also negotiates a royalty and refuses to sign without reading the contract. So they have agreed on a 6-month lease. Then Pan-Okie gets to work. But 6 months in, and Devnan tells Sarah there's no oil in her land. They have stopped working, but left all the equipment there since it is more expensive to take it back. Just a few days later, a big back man named Earl Rasking offers to buy Sarah's land for $6 an acre. The fat man calls Joe a coon, and I would have refused that offer right there. Earl asks to see the deed as well, but Joe needs to consult his smart daughter first. Because of the high offer, Sarah figures that Earl is working for Pan-Okie. She suspects that the company found oil in her land and now wants it for themselves. So later, the family buries the deed of Sarah's land where no one can find it. Just then, Earl returns with another thug, both of them with guns. They barge into the house while the family's outside. While they look for the deed, Sarah's dog, Blue, attacks them. So they shoot the dog. These ugly mayonnaise deserve worse than death. When the family returns, Blue is missing and the house is a mess. Devnan is devastated when he finds out his men failed. Sarah wants to get rid of the deed after realizing it could get them killed. But her mother, Rose, tells her that God gave her the land for a reason. The next day, as Sarah looks for Blue, thinking her dog is still alive, she stumbles into a camp full of men. She sees Bert Smith, the guy from the cafe. Bert and his friend Mace are wildcatters, but they've had no luck of late finding oil. So Sarah tells him the whole story about Pan-Okie and Earl Rasking, and afterwards asks Bert to work with her. Sarah mentions that Pan-Okie has left all their equipment on her land, so Bert finally accepts the job, and they both agree on a 50-50 share. Bert insists on meeting Sarah's parents first before they get to work. Because Pan-Okie has drilled over 1,000 feet, they start to dig deeper than that, and Sarah names her well Sarah's Oil. Then one day, Devnan returns, claiming that the land is his. He produces a document saying he owns the mineral rights to the land. But Sarah knows the lease has already expired. She reminds the old man that it was his choice to leave the equipment there. She yells at the crusty man for killing her dog. Furious, Devnan has declared war on the family. Knowing there's oil under, Bert and Mace keep working. Unfortunately, the equipment breaks and they've hit a part they can't drill through. Bert thinks it's time to abandon the hole, but Sarah refuses to give up, and Mace suggests they either use explosives or a wall hook. Bert and Sarah visit a chemist to have the oil tested. While waiting, Bert meets one of the widows he's been courting. He doesn't even remember her name because he's only flirting with her to get some money.
Do you think I just slip out of my bloomers for any man that comes along?
Oh my! Once the results are out, the chemist says the oil in Sarah's land is heavily mixed with salt water, which means they're not going to get any money from it. Bert suspects the chemist is lying, so they wait until the shop closes. As expected, the chemist takes the sample and plans to bring it to Pan-Okie. Bert confronts him, and the chemist with an ugly middle part admits he's working for Devnan. So Bert takes the sample back, and he and Sarah head to Taft, a black town. During the ride, Bert utters a racial slur and he quickly apologizes for it. See, you can never trust Zionist Zachary Levi. He tells Sarah that he's not that kind of person. Sure, an old man who is not a professional geologist tests the oil. Afterward, he announces that Sarah's oil is the lightest sample he's ever tested. The crude is so pure it doesn't have any color when separated from the mud. The problem is, the hole is still clogged, and they don't have money to fix the engine. Bert tries his luck with a banker, but gets rejected. So Bert diverts his attention once more to widows. When Sarah gets tired of waiting, she makes the deal herself. She honestly explains their situation and their desperate need of money. She even exposes Bert's hotation, but lies to the widow saying she's the favorite. Once they have the fun, Bert buys their tools as soon as possible. One man tells him he ought to be ashamed for using Sarah, so Bert snaps and hits the guy. One night, the marshal goes around spreading the news about 2 Native American children who were murdered in their sleep. They were killed for their land, which had oil. Now Rose is worried about Sarah's safety. Bert and Mace get to work again, but the equipment malfunctions once more, putting their work to a halt. Then they get visitors. Edward Karen is the legal counsel for Panoki. He brings some documents, claiming that they want their equipment back and they want the oil and proceeds acquired from using the rig. On top of that, he says they have a claim on the land based on the sublease that Sarah signed. He also insists that Sarah kicked Panoki out of the land. Edward Karen is the original Karen. So Bert threatens to shoot, but Devnan doesn't give up easily. His men beat up Bert before he offers him a deal. Devnan mentions the white guardians for the ex-slave population and suggests that Bert could be Sarah's guardian. He adds that Bert could then sign the deal on Sarah's behalf. Bert demands 15% and promises to find a way to get Sarah to agree. Rose is so afraid that she'd rather hand the deed over than risk Sarah's life. Bert reveals to Mace that they will get 15% of all the proceeds and Sarah won't get any. Since they can't dig any further, he thinks it's time to work with Panoki. But Mace doesn't like the plan. He thinks they're stealing from the girl. Mace even calls him a pendejo, and I don't disagree.
Pendejo!
When the family gets home, they find their dog, Blue, unharmed and waiting for them. Soon, Bert makes Sarah sign a document making him her white guardian. And because Sarah trusts Bert, she signs. There will be a court hearing to verify the guardianship. By the time it happens, the white guardians are already an issue. Many of them are stealing the lands trusted to them and making deals with oil companies. So on the day that Sarah heads to the court, there are a lot of people supporting her. Judge Lee asks her if she agrees to let Bert act on her behalf in all legal and financial matters. Sarah confirms and tells the judge that Bert is a good man. A woman named Kate Barnard, the first American woman elected to a post, volunteers to represent Sarah. In front of everyone, Sarah questions why she needs a white guardian just because she's black. Without answering, the judge adjourns the hearing after granting the guardianship to Bert. Sarah's parents agree to make Miss Barnard Sarah's legal counsel. Even though Miss Barnard is super pale, I trust her more than Bert. Devnan and his partner are still interested in the land, so Bert stands by his demands and asks them to guarantee Sarah's safety. But Sarah is disappointed when she finds out. Bert explains that he has a plan. He thinks that since Panoki is building wells around Sarah's property, they better take advantage of it and demand payment too. But Sarah doesn't want to work with crooks, and she's worried about Bert's soul. After Mace drives the family home, he confronts the thugs from Panoki who have been following the family. Mace gets shot and killed on the spot. After hearing the gunshot, Rose orders her children to run. When the men come knocking, demanding to see Sarah, Joe fires his own gun. After discovering Joe is armed, the 2 busted ugly men retreat. When Bert sees Earl, he gets a bad feeling. He hitches a ride with Miss Barnard and Mr. Farr from the NAACP, who wants to write about Sarah. It's already dark when the children reach Creek territory. Bert and Miss Barnard learn about the thugs sent by Panoki. On top of that, Bert learns Mace has died. Miss Barnard explains that the oil company doesn't need Bert or Sarah. If Sarah dies before signing the deal, all the rights to the land will be returned to the state. But if Sarah dies afterward, then Panoki will retain legal claim to whatever Bert signed over to them. After realizing Sarah will be killed no matter what, Bert suggests they transfer the guardianship to Miss Barnard. The next day, the thugs cross into Creek territory and find the kids. They start shooting at Sarah, but the tribal police stop and arrest them for trespassing. Sarah's parents and Bert arrive just in time. The 2 thugs are also being charged with the attempted murder of Sarah. A few days later, Miss Barnard talks to the judge and asks him to re-examine Sarah's guardianship. The judge explains that the land is already signed over to Bert and can only be re-examined if there are some errors in the documents. So Bert reveals that he's from Texas and has no way of proving full residency in Oklahoma. Because of this, the judge says the guardianship is null and void. To ensure Sarah's safety, the guardianship is transferred to Miss Barnard. The judge warns them that Panoki will retaliate. So Bert decides to deal with them once and for all and puts dynamite in Sarah's well. As expected, Devnan and his men show up. He plays coy, so Miss Devnan reminds him that the guardianship has been nullified, and the deal with Bert doesn't mean anything. Unfortunately, Devnan plans to deal with them with a machine gun. Just before he can use it, Sarah detonates the bomb, hoping that no one gets hurt. Then oil comes bursting out of the hole, just like my bathroom experience the other day. Devnan tries to shoot Sarah, but Joe stops him, and he gets arrested by the tribal police. Finally, Sarah celebrates her win. When Bert sees the widows looking for him, he tells Sarah he owes those widows a lot of money. He says goodbye to the little girl without taking any money with him. Sarah begs him to stay, but Bert wants to find another adventure in Israel. Sarah later meets John Rockefeller, and they make a deal. The rich man paid Sarah $36 million for the rights to her land and the surrounding lots, and she got a 12.5% royalty. As soon as Sarah gets rich at just 11 years old, she buys the Busy Bee Cafe and opens it to everyone. Can you believe this is based on a true story and Sarah was one of the first black females to become a millionaire? What a wonderful movie that y'all should watch. What did you guys think of this one?
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. So, if you like to watch more foolishness, you can click here or here.